one that he...
Really? So maybe it wasn't his contract then.
There's no official Calvin and Hollis merchandise other than the books.
Interesting. I didn't know that. That's really cool. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah. No Hobbs toys. No
That's
Hobbs
really
toys.
interesting. I could have sworn I've seen
I
Hobbs.
had to get a generic stuffed tiger as a kid and name it Hobbs. It's terrible.
There is illegal stuff out there. I've seen stickers.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure. There's no matter what. If you can name the IP, there's illegal stuff floating around.
Calvin peeing on a logo, totally legit.
I got to tell you, I'm in my estimation, that does not rise to the level of parody or satire. So, all right. So here's what copyright, and we'll talk about that. Here's what copyright law does not give. It does not give you total control over your work. Okay. They transition to the public domain and available for the public when the copyright term expires. And how long is that? In the United States, any work created after 2002 expires 70 years after the death of the author. And by the way, 2002 was when Winnie the Pooh came up.
Oh.
Well, right before that, and Disney lobbied to have that extended.
Okay, wow.
And then, if the work is of corporate authorship, the term is 95 from publication or 120 from creation. Think about that for a second.
That's insane.
That is not just your lifetime. That is your lifetime and your children's lifetime. But we can thank Disney for that. Okay, it used to be 70 years.
Corporations are very long-lived people.
They're perpetual.
Yes.
Do LLCs fall underneath that?
No.
No.
But you can have a perpetual LLC. I mean, you just assign it. You know, you assign it to your children. Right? You bring them in as a member, and then you fall off as a member. All right. Needless to say, there's a whole host of arguments against these terms, not the least of which is the fact that lengthy terms appear on their face to contravene the law's intent as an incentive to contribute to society as a whole. You know, the argument is that all they do is contribute to the enrichment of one company. Right? You know, it's excessive. 100-year monopoly on something, that's pretty excessive. Can you imagine if there was a 100-year monopoly on a life-saving drug? Yeah. But God forbid Mickey Mouse should be able to be used by anybody else. So, all right, here's some exceptions to copyright, and these are the things that you guys always want to talk about. Face-to-face instruction. This is the reason I can use these things in my slides, like the picture of the racing stripes and whatnot. All right. Virtual instruction and fair use. All right. Fair use is a limitation or exception of the rights granted to a copyright holder. It allows someone other than the copyright holder to use a copyrighted work. Okay. Even if the holder refuses to give permission. So there's a fun story. Like Weird Al does not need permission in any way, shape, or form to do his songs, but he always does because he's ethical like that and he wants to give fair notice. There have been a couple instances. There are Weird Al songs that we've never heard because he didn't get permission, even though he didn't need them. It's okay. Right? There's a fun urban legend about a meeting between George Lucas and Mel Brooks, wherein Mel Brooks said, "George, you gonna have any problem if I make this Spaceballs movie?" And the response apparently was, "Yeah, go ahead. No toys." At the end of the day, we all realize, right, that Star Wars is a merchandising franchise, not a movie franchise. Star Wars is a toy and merchandise franchise, not a movie franchise.
Is that the reason why they made fun of it in the Spaceballs movie?
Yeah, there's a scene where the Yoda character says, "Get him here because you can't get him anywhere else."
And may the Schwartz be with you.
Exactly. So, but you realize that, there are certain things, and it sort of clues you in on the business reasons behind certain decisions, It lets you know very, very clearly that Star Wars is not a movie franchise. So why do we allow fair use, right? I love this. This is a good one. By carving out a space for creative uses of music, literature, and movies during the period that it would otherwise be protected, it's intended to reduce and relieve the tensions between copyright law and the First Amendment's guarantee of freedom of expression. Okay? This quote, "It is the guarantee of breathing space for new expression within the confines of copyright law." All right? And believe it or not, and particularly this administration, political satire is a powerful tool. And that's why we allow it. It's freedom of expression, and it allows certain people to say certain things in a very, very clear and explicit way that might otherwise be defamation. Right? So how does a court decide whether something's fair? Here's artists always say, you know, fair use. It's fair use. I can use that. Well, usually they're wrong. Okay. The first time anybody says to you, "I have a right to fair use," you know they're full of shit. Because you don't have a right to fair use. Nobody has a right to fair use. Fair use is always an exception to someone else's absolute right to control their work. The proper term is, I believe there's a fair use exception here. Okay? And I regularly use online the fun statement, "I'm sorry, but your Google search is not the equivalent of my law degree." So you would not be, you might be surprised, or you might not be surprised, the amount of people who want to argue with me about what fair use is, because they've done some Google searching, and they just don't want to be told that their entire business model is based on theft. So, you know, when I do this talk at big conventions like Gen Con or, you know, Origins or whatever, I just say, when we're done here, go take a walk through Artist Alley. No one in here will be surprised when I say fan art is illegal. Not illegal. Fan art is a violation of someone's copyright. Sorry, it is. The only reason you're not being sued for it is those companies just don't have the resources or care. If you start making $100,000 on your fan art, they might care. Anybody familiar with Star Wars Axanar?
Star Trek.
Star Trek Axanar. They raised $1 million+ for a Star Trek fan film. George Takei, who else? Somebody was supposed to be in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, Paramount looked up and said, yeah, you know, the $1 million you just raised probably should have come to us for the next Star Trek project. You can't use our IP like that. And the guy, of course, the producer said the whole time, "Oh, my attorney said it's fine, yeah." There is not an attorney I've ever met who would say you can go ahead and use Star Trek without Paramount's permission.
Didn't that set a precedence for fan films after that?
Well, what happened was, so Lucas already had it. And the good thing is Disney is honoring all of Lucasfilm's stipulations for how to make a Star Wars fan film without, you know, us coming after you.
Oh.
You can't monetize it. You can't. It can't be longer than X minutes. There can't be any commercials attached to it, right? Because basically they're saying you can't make money from this, which doesn't matter. You can still be in violation of someone's IP if you're not making money on it. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Paramount did it with Star Trek films. They basically stopped the guy from making any more money on it. They said, you know, you have to break it up. Each episode can't be longer than 5 minutes. You can't put any. So there were a whole bunch of strictures. But if you can, right now, you can go out and make a Star Trek fan film or Star Wars fan film, as long as you abide by the rules the company put on their website.
The money he got, I can't remember, was that crowdfunded or was that?
It was crowdfunded.
Did he have to return? Did he have to return that money?
Nah.
Okay.
No, he didn't have to return that money. I mean, you remember, at the end of the day, crowdfunding, you don't have to deliver anything on a crowdfunding platform. You never have to deliver on it, and there's no legal ramifications.
Really?
Yeah. It's all about patronization. That's why they get around the IRS restrictions. It's not pre-orders. Yeah. You had a question.
Yeah, I just wondered. So for something like that, if you were doing fan art and selling it, would they typically send you like a cease and desist, or would they like try and sue you or something?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of companies around the world that are trolling people now. Certain people in this room have received letters in the last couple of weeks from IP trolls, right? So usually you'll get a letter first. I mean, nobody files a lawsuit without warning you unless you're engaged in $1 million fraud case or something. You know, if you're just doing fan art and selling it on your website, you'll get a cease and desist because the resources involved in suing you on the other end, you know, it's $20,000 or $30,000 to get that ball rolling, right?
And if you're like at a comic convention, all the known artists are...
Well, the known artists will get you kicked off the floor.
No, but they're also doing sketch commissions. Yeah. But Marvel doesn't look at it. That's like we employ you, and it's a marketing tool for us.
Well, they could. I mean, they could.
They could, yeah.
You take your life in your hands when you do fan art and sell it at a convention. If you've ever actually read your vendor agreement at a convention, it always says, you know, I certify that everything I sell is my own IP. I'm not infringing on anyone else's, and I will. Here's the key phrase: I will indemnify and defend the convention if the convention gets sued because I'm selling ripped off art. What that means is, if they get sued, you got to step in and defend that case and pay for it. So be really, really careful about that stuff.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
Create your own IP and use it.
Exactly.
Exploit it.
Any other questions? Moving on.
I do have a fair use question, but it's kind of specific.
Sure. Oh God, I can't sit. My butt just hurts.
Do you want a chair from outside?
So
if you can grab one, that'd be great.
if you have somebody who's basically giving a presentation,
Sure.
and they're giving it to either, let's imagine we're all part of one company, okay? You come in, you're gonna give us a presentation, and you've lifted some samples from the internet to talk about like a direction you wanna go. And say it's an ad campaign for a book or something, it's basically, it's somebody's ad campaign.
What is the use? I mean, are you
And
giving?
the use is you're trying to get everybody else to come up with something totally different brand, not related, but just you thought this was a really cool approach.
I submit to you, it's probably fair, and even if it's not, you know, what is the likelihood that someone's going to, external to your company, is going to find out and sue you for it?
Right, it's just,
Right? You're, at the end of the day, my job is to minimize your risk, right? Because there are things that I could tell you to do that are super expensive, that, you know, would stop you from walking down certain paths, but, you know, there are risks that are worth taking. And there are risks that, ultimately, there's no way you're going to get sued for this.
it was just,
Like if I draw Spider-Man and hang it in my bathroom, that's infringement. The drawing of Spider-Man is the infringing act, right? But what the hell? Like, who's going to sue me for that? How is anybody going to find out that I drew Spider-Man and hung it in my bathroom?
it was an interesting question somebody asked me a while back.